Why can't I dig my own hole but still teach Zero to read? He asked. What's wrong with that? I'll tell you what's wrong with that, the warden said. It leads to trouble. Zero almost killed Zigzag. Because it causes him stress, said Mr. Pendanski. I know you mean well, Stanley, but let's face it, Zero's too stupid to learn to read. That's what makes his blood boil, not the hot sun. I'm not digging another hole, said Zero. Mr. Pendanski handed him the shovel. Here, take it, Zero. This is all you'll ever be good for. Zero took the shovel. He swung it like a baseball bat. The metal blade smashed across Mr. Pendanski's face. His knees crumbled beneath him. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. The counselors all drew their guns. Zero held out the shovel in front of him as if he were going to try to bat away bullets. I hate digging holes, he said. Then he slowly backed away. Don't shoot him, said the warden. He can't go anywhere. The last thing we need is investigation. Zero kept backing up. Out past the cluster of holes the boys had been digging, then further and farther out onto the lake. He's going to have to come back for water, the warden said. Stanley noticed Zero's canteen lying on the ground near his hole. A couple of the counselors helped Mr. Pendanski to his feet and into the truck. Stanley looked out toward Zero, but he had disappeared into the haze. The warden ordered the counselors to take turns guarding the shower in the rec room all day and all night. They were not to let Zero drink any water. When he returned, he was to be brought directly to her. She examined her fingernails and said, It's almost time for me to paint my nails again. Before she left, she told the 6 remaining members of Group D that she still expected 7 holes. Chapter 31. Stanley angrily dug his shovel into the dirt. He was angry at everyone, Mr. Pendanski, the warden, Zigzag, X-Ray, and his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather. But most of all, he was angry at himself. He knew he should have never let Zero dig part of his hole for him. He still could have taught him how to read. If Zero could dig all day and have the strength to learn, then he could have been able to dig all day and have the strength to teach. What should he do, he thought. What he should do, he thought, was go out after Zero. But he didn't. None of the others helped him dig Zero's hole. And he didn't expect them to. Zero had been helping him dig his hole. Now he had to dig Zero's. He remained out on the lake, digging during the hottest part of the day, long after everyone else had gone in. He kept an eye out for Zero, but Zero didn't come back. It would have been easy for him to go out after Zero. There was absolutely nobody to stop him. He kept thinking about what he should do. Maybe they could climb to the top of Big Thumb, if it wasn't too far away. And if it really was the same place as his great-grandfather found refuge, and if 100 years ago water was still there. It didn't seem likely, not even when the entire lake had gone dry. And even if they did find refuge on Big Thumb, he thought, they'd still have to come back here eventually. Then they'd both have to face the warden and her rattlesnake fingers. Instead, he came up with a better idea, although he didn't have it all quite figured out yet. He thought maybe he could make a deal with the warden. He'd tell her where he really found the gold tube if she wouldn't scratch Zero. He wasn't real sure how to make this deal without getting himself into deeper trouble. She might just say, tell me where you found it or I'll scratch you too. Plus, it would mean X-Ray would get into trouble too. She'd probably scratch him up as well. X-Ray would be out to get him for the next 16 months. He dug his shovel into the dirt. By the next morning, Zero still hadn't returned. Stanley saw one of the counselors sitting guard by the water spigot outside the shower wall. Mr. Pendanski had 2 black eyes and a bandage over his nose. "I always knew he was stupid," Stanley heard him say. Stanley was required to dig only 1 hole the next day. As he dug, he kept a constant watch out for Zero, but he never saw him. Once again, he considered going out to the lake to look for him, but he began to realize that it was already too late. His only hope was that Zero had found God's thumb on his own. It wasn't impossible. His great-grandfather had found it. For some reason, his great-grandfather had felt the urge to climb to the top of that mountain. Maybe Zero would feel the same urge. If it was the same mountain, if there still was water there. He tried to convince himself it wasn't impossible. There had been a storm there just a few days ago. Maybe Big Thumb was actually some kind of a natural water tower that got caught and stored by the rain. It wasn't impossible. He returned to his tent to find the warden, Mr. Sir, and Mr. Pendanski all waiting for him. "Have you seen Zero?" the warden asked him. "No." "No sign of him at all?" "No." "Do you have any idea where he went?" "No." "You know you're not going to be doing him any favors if you're lying." "Whoops." You know you're not going to be doing him any favors if you're lying," said Mr. Sir. "He can't survive out there for more than a day or 2. "I don't know where he is." All 3 stared at Stanley as if they were trying to figure out if he was telling the truth. Mr. Pendanski's face was so swollen he could barely open his eyes. They were just slits. "You sure he has no family?" the warden asked Mr. Pendanski. "He's a ward of the state," Mr. Pendanski told him. "He was living on the streets when he was arrested." "Is there anyone who might ask questions? Some social worker who took an interest in him?" "He had nobody," said Mr. Pendanski. "He was nobody." The warden thought for a moment. "Okay, I want you to destroy all his records." Mr. Pendanski nodded. "He was never here," said the warden. Mr. Sir nodded. "Can you get into the state files from your computer?" she asked Mr. Pendanski. "I don't want anyone in the AG's office to know that he was here." "I don't think I can erase him completely from all the state files," said Mr. Pendanski. "Too many cross-references. But I can make it so it'd be very difficult for anyone to ever find a record of him. Like I said, though, no one will ever look. No one cares about Hector Zeroni." "Good," said the warden. Chapter 32. Two days later, a new kid was assigned to Group D. His name was Brian, but X-Ray called him Twitch because he was always fidgeting. Twitch was assigned to Zero's bed and in Zero's crate. Vacancies don't last long at Camp Green Lake. Twitch had been arrested for stealing a car. He claimed he could break into a car, disconnect the alarm, and hotwire the engine all in less than a minute. "I never planned to, steal one," he told them. "But sometimes, I'll be walking fast past a real nice car parked in a deserted area, and, I'll just start twitching. If I twitch now, you'd see me. If you think I twitch now, you'd see me twitch when I'm around a car. Next thing I know, I'm behind the wheel." Stanley lay there on his scratchy sheets. It occurred to him that his cot no longer smelled bad. He wondered if the smell had gone away or if he'd just gotten used to it. "Hey, gate man," said Twitch. "Do we really have to get up at 4:30? "You get used to it," Stanley told him. "It's the coolest part of the day." He tried not to think about Zero. It was too late. Either he made it to Big Thumb or... What worried him the most, however, was that it was too late. What worried him the most was that What worried him the most, what really ate at his insides, was the fear that it wasn't too late. What if Zero was still alive, desperately crawling across the dirt, searching for water? He tried to force the image out of his mind. Next morning out in the lake, Stanley listened as Mr. Sir told Twitch the requirements for his hole. As wide and as deep as your shovel. Twitch fidgeted. His fingers drummed against the wooden shaft of the shovel. His neck moved from side to side. You wouldn't be twitching so much after digging all day, Mr. Sir told him. You won't have enough strength to wiggle your pinky. He popped some sunflower seeds in his mouth and deftly chewed them and spat out the shells. This isn't a Girl Scout camp. The water truck came by shortly after sunrise. Stanley got in line behind Magnet, ahead of Twitch. What if it's not too late? He watched Mr. Sir fill X-Ray's canteen. The image of Zero crawling across the hot, dry desert remained in his head. But what could he do about it? Even if Zero somehow was alive for more than 4 days, how would Stanley ever find him? It would take days. He'd need a car. Or a pickup truck. A pickup truck with a tank of water in the back. Stanley wondered if Mr. Sir had left the keys in the ignition. He slowly backed away from the line, then circled over to the side of the truck. He looked through the window. The keys were there, dangling in the ignition. Stanley felt his fingers start to twitch. He took a deep breath to steady himself and tried to think clearly. He had never driven before. But how hard could it be? This was really crazy, he told himself. Whatever he did, he knew he'd have to do it quickly before Mr. Sir noticed. It's too late, he told himself. Zero couldn't have survived. But what if it wasn't too late? He took another deep breath. Think about this, he told himself. But there wasn't time to think. He flung open the door of the truck and climbed quickly inside. Hey! Shouted Mr. Sir. He turned the key and stepped on the gas pedal. The engine revved. The truck didn't move. He pressed the pedal to the floor. The engine roared, but the truck was motionless. Mr. Sir came running to the side of the truck. The door was still open. Put it in gear, shouted Twitch. The gear shift was on the floor next to the seat. Stanley pulled back the lever until the arrow pointed past the letter D for drive. The truck lurched forward. Stanley jerked back against the seat, tightly gripped the wheel as the truck accelerated. His foot was pressed to the floor. The truck went faster and faster across the dry lake bed. It bounced over a pile of dirt. Suddenly, Stanley slammed forward, then instantly backward, and an airbag exploded into his face. He fell out of the open door and onto the ground. He had driven straight into a hole. He lay on the dirt, staring at the truck which stuck lopsided into the ground. He sighed. He couldn't blame his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather this time. This time, it was his own fault. 100%. He'd probably just done the stupidest thing he had ever done in his short, miserable life. He managed to get to his feet. He was sore, but didn't think he had any broken bones. He glanced back at Mr. Sir, who remained where he was, staring at Stanley. He ran. His canteen was strapped around his neck. It banged against his chest as he ran, and every time it hit against him, it reminded him that it was empty. Empty, empty.